Hi, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. This is going to be our last week of online discussion in the Christ in the City class. And as we finish up this course, we're going to work together on a case study. And the purpose of a case study is to take what we learn and apply it in a real life situation. And the case study we're going to discuss, haves and have nots, is a true story shared with me by a student of mine who worked with an agency in Haiti. And in a process, this agency discovered that they were creating dissension in the community and in some ways actually hurt the community more than they helped it. Now in this case, we see many of the things that we've discussed in this course come into play. We see how what Paulo Freire talked about when he said that those who come to relieve oppression and work on behalf of those who are oppressed sometimes can actually oppress them more. We see that a theological orientation of a Christian agency, even though it was well-meaning, was ultimately counterproductive. We see the importance of what Ronald Peter talks about when he talks about having a bottom-up theological perspective. We see a story of how people go into a community with a deep sense of mission, but who, as Corbett and Ficker talk about in their book When Helping Hurts, actually cause more struggle than they relieve. Now, as you work together on this case in your small groups, my hope is that you'll see, number one, that simply having good intentions is not enough. And number two, that you'll see that our theology really does matter because it informs what we look for in a community, and it informs how we go about seeking to bring help and wholeness to a community. In that vein, I am reminded of a story that is found in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but we're going to read the version that's found in Mark chapter 8. Now, just preceding this incident that I'm going to read about, Jesus has asked his disciples who other people think he is, and he's gotten a variety of responses. And then he says, well, who do you say that I am? And in a moment of inspiration, the disciple Peter blurts out, you're the Messiah. And Jesus says, you are right. But then, starting in verse 31 of chapter 8, we read these words. Jesus then began to teach the disciples that the Son of Man must suffer many things and would be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Jesus spoke plainly about these things, and Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him. But then Jesus turned and looked at his disciples and rebuked Peter. Get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of human beings. Now, what's so interesting about this particular story is that Peter did what he believed was right. He was trying to protect Jesus from having to suffer and die. His intentions were pure. His heart was in the right place, but he was dead wrong. That's why Jesus scolds him and even calls him Satan. I mean, those are pretty harsh words. You see, just like Peter, we can have the right intentions and yet miss the mark entirely in what needs to really happen in a community. We may want to rescue people from their struggles, but what they need is to be empowered. We may want to meet all their immediate needs, and yet what is really called for is to try and help folks to gain the capacity to meet their own needs. You see, essentially, it comes down to our theology. Do we see ourselves as trying to save people, or do we see ourselves becoming the living incarnation of the living Christ and come alongside of folks just the way Jesus came and lived among us and joined people in their struggle against oppression, poverty, racism, discouragement, and fear? These are the things that I hope that we can keep in mind as we work together in our small groups to discuss this very important case study, the haves and have-nots. I look forward to interacting with you and learning with you around this very important concern.